All right, so for you beginner Southern California anglers, this is going to cover the 5 main groups of artificial baits we use here in Southern California. So whether you're up in LA, fishing out at the Catalina Islands, down here fishing the kelp beds out of La Jolla or Point Loma, or even going down to the Coronado Islands, the 5 main groups will have you covered year around. So let's get started. Number 1, we're going to talk about the yo-yo jigs. All right, this is a classic Southern California jig. Doesn't look like much. These ones are kind of heavier. You generally have a treble hook on them, and they'll come in a variety of colors, but the most common that I see are these blue ones. There's also this kind of like a calico bass pattern, scrambled egg, bird shit, whatever you want to call it. But these are used especially during the springtime for yellowtail by just tossing them out and letting them sink all the way to the bottom and then burning them up and doing that over and over and over again. And that is the yo-yo action, letting them fall down, pulling them back up, fall down, pulling them back up. And you go really fast. I mean, if you're, yo-yo jigging, sometimes you're going to be, really wrecking your hands doing that all day, but they are so effective. And not just yellowtail. I mean, they catch bass, they catch barracuda, they catch all kinds of different stuff. I've seen sheephead caught on them and stuff like that. You always want to have a handful of those, especially early on in the season. So number 2 is going to be your surface iron. And the surface irons look a lot like those yo-yo jigs, right? Similar colors, similar shape, but the surface irons are meant to be casted out far and brought back on the surface. They've got these 2 points here that are usually offset a little bit, kind of like hips, that give it a little bit of a wiggle action, right? So you want them moving so it kind of attracts these fish. And sometimes you'll find some that just don't swim very well. Now, when you toss them out, you generally want to point your rod down a little bit so that you're not kind of letting it come out of the water. You want it to swim flat on top of the water. And if you see it not swimming, you might want to switch them. But, generally speaking, these Tadies do fantastically well, but they make a bunch of different brands make them in different shapes, colors, even textures and things like that. Once again, the top 3 colors that I see are these blue ones, the mint ones. You can see, look at this, how much action this thing has got. It's all chewed up. And then, this scrambled egg, bird shit, calico, whatever you want to call that pattern. So, so far we've covered the yo-yo jigs. We've covered the surface irons. You want to make sure you have, a handful of different sizes and colors of each for, different times a year and different weather patterns and stuff like that. Absolute key. Now, the 3rd group that I want to talk about, and these ones are bass killers. I mean, they catch just about everything, but whether you're messing around in the bays or lagoons or going out a little bit fishing the kelp patties or rather kelp forests and things like that, or fishing out at the islands, these paddle tail plastic swim baits are absolute killers. These catch calico bass like no other. For whatever reason, it's the real kind of like wiggly action with the paddle tail there and big hook and a weighted head here. These things do absolutely fantastic, and they come in a variety of sizes. This one, it's a little beat up, but this guy it's like a watermelon color, got a little bit of red in there, green at the top. I use a pink head. These ones are absolute killers in San Diego Bay, for instance, catching the spotted bay bass and all kinds of other stuff. And then you've got even these big ones that will catch big calico bass. They'll catch big anything. All different sizes, all different colors. This one, I think we call it Christmas tree. It's kind of sparkly and stuff. Now, you will see different colors hit on different days. I think oftentimes that has to do with the way the sun is reflecting off of the color itself and whether, it's got some of these little sparkly features or what have you. But it's always great to have, again, just like everything else, different colors, and not just the jig itself, but also the jig head. So you buy the jig head separately. I usually go with at least a 3/4 ounce, oftentimes a 1 ounce or even bigger if I can get it, for fishing for calico bass out in the kelp. But a 1/2 ounce is perfect for the bay or even smaller. And this is a weedless version, so I think this is a Warbaits head here. This one will kind of keep you out of the weeds. And some of the other soft plastics that I see that are really successful are these tube baits. So they've got, a weighted jig head with the eye on top here. So you tie it here, and these things really hit on the fall. They've got this kind of interesting cut at the back, but otherwise they're kind of nondescript and it doesn't look like much. When you toss these things out, they're going to hit on the fall. And I've used all kinds of different colors. Sometimes they outfish live bait. I mean, they're definitely, you want a couple different colors. And I think the trick with those is, especially when you're not fishing in the bay, when you're fishing out in the open ocean and the, over by the kelps and all that other stuff, have a variety of weight. Sometimes you need a heavier one because that current kicks in, and they're not really that effective when they're scoping out. You want it to drop straight down. Those yo-yo irons that I talked about earlier, you're rarely going to have a problem with those things scoping out inshore, but these tube baits, they definitely will. And even, you know, some of these other plastics. So you want to have a heavy enough jig head to get it down there. So pay attention to that when you purchase those. But those are the soft plastics. Now we'll move to the hard plastics. The hard plastics are, you know, they're an interesting bait. You know, these ones, they kind of have like these bearings in here that weigh it down, and you can cast these really far. Some of them sink, some of them kind of go right below the surface, but they'll catch all kinds of stuff too. They're fun to, you know, catch a good sized bass on, or, you know, sometimes that barracuda bite is happening. And, you know, with fish that have sharp teeth, they tear those plastics up. I mean, it just, you know, sometimes you can't get more than 3 or 4 fish before they actually like bite these tails off, especially with those barracuda, but even with the bonito and stuff, these hard plastics will nail it over and over and over again. So these ones are great. I like this guy right here. I was actually watching Local Knowledge, and Ali mentioned that, you know, the Nomad Mad Scat is one that he really likes, and it kind of looks like a Mad Mac. It actually very close, just a lot smaller. They use for trolling for bluefin tuna, but these guys are great. I mean, there's a lot of different baits that look like this and have the same action, but, you know, it kind of wiggles along, and, you know, they will catch things when others won't at times. So again, we're talking about having an arsenal here, and these hard plastics are fantastic. So again, different colors, different sizes, always great to have. But that is the number 4 group. And the 5th and final group, and this is kind of a bigger group, are the sinking metal jigs. So the number 1 jig that I will always have with me no matter where I go is the Colt Sniper, or Current Sniper, whatever they're called now. They used to be called Colt Sniper. Shimano makes them, and there's a lot of knockoff brands too, but these guys have have kind of like this aerodynamic shape to them that they fall in an interesting enough way to where it attracts fish. And, you know, sometimes it's super early in the season and nothing is biting. This will get down there and attract enough attention to get a bite. I've done it over and over again, but they'll catch yellowfin, they'll catch yellowtail. I mean, they will catch everything. So if nothing else is working, you're dropping the yo-yos, you're throwing the surface irons, you're doing everything in between, a Colt Sniper is a fantastic way to go, because it's like they just get it done when nothing else will. So going along with that, you know, Daiwa Zakanas, these ones are cool. You know, oftentimes they have interesting colors and reflective qualities to them. You know, here is a Daiwa SK. The bigger ones we use for bluefin tuna, but these ones are great. These will also pick up rockfish. And the great thing about fishing for rockfish in like 200-300 feet of water or even more is that these will actually get down in the zone relatively easily, because, you know, they're metal and they're heavy. So, you know, whether it's, you know, something like this or even like a butterfly jig like this, and there's everything in between, you know, having some of these irons to the novice, they don't look like much, but they really do make a difference. You know, when you're going through and you're seeing these anglers out there, take a look at what they have, and I guarantee they're going to have some of each of these. And, you know, depending on the trip, sometimes you'll leave certain ones home, but I'm always going to have a handful of each of these, you know, no matter what we're doing, if we're fishing inshore, because you never know what's going to hit on a certain day. And sometimes when you're just knocking it out in the park with the surface irons or with the plastics, and you can do no wrong with that, it's fun to kind of challenge yourself and switch it up a little bit and use a different type of bait. So I may have missed some here. So if I did, please make sure to comment. If you haven't already, like, comment, follow my channel. I'm trying to put together a bunch of different type of tutorials for people who aren't used to fishing down here, to kind of get you better acquainted to this in a faster way, so that you start having fun immediately. We've got a fantastic resource in our waters here and our sport fishing fleet. So, you know, definitely utilize them, but bring your own stuff, because sometimes live bait doesn't just cut it, and sometimes these things are just flat out funner to fish than live bait. Now I do have a link to most of these baits on in my bio, so you can go on there and buy them. Of course, if you do, I benefit a little bit. However, I will always recommend that you go into the tackle shop and talk to the local people about it, because, you know, you're going to see different products out there, newer products, different colors, different this, different that. You know, every year there seems to be a new sinking jig coming out and stuff like that. So always go in there, and if you have the time, but, you know, while you're stocking up. So I think we've covered all 5 main groups of artificials that we use here for inshore species. If I missed any, absolutely comment and let me know. If you haven't already, already, like my video, comment, follow it. All of that helps me out. I'm trying to put these videos together for new anglers to Southern California so they can get better acquainted quicker and start catching fish a lot faster. As always, I generally try to link to most of these products in my bio so that if you go on there, you can buy them directly off of Amazon or whatever. For those of you that are, maybe a little too busy to go to the tackle shop. However, I always recommend going into the tackle shop. You never know what's new or what new colors they might have or sales and things like that. If you buy them off that link in my bio, I benefit here and there financially. So, I always encourage you to do that, secondary to going into the tackle shop. Anyhow, I hope this was helpful. I hope that one of these helps you catch a new species, maybe your personal best or maybe your first fish. So get out there, get on a boat, go fishing, and report back. I'd love to hear what you do. But no matter what, get out there and have fun.